Welcome everybody to another episode of Spock the Week. This time I am joined by not only our fellow co-host Gregor Cameron, but his lovely assistant and loving partner Sarah Adams. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Fantastic. Sarah is also the USS Alba's resident Memory Alpha geek, so we'll expect a few little factoids and exciting little tidbits throughout the show, but as always we will start with empathic episodes, and we have each selected a episode that best reflects Captain Picard and his style, his ship, and just him as a man, him as a character. So without further ado, we're going to get into empathic episodes. Okay, so Sarah and Gregor, you have both made your choices and I have made mine. We've all watched each other's, I'm guessing. I'm hoping we've all watched our respective choices. This is the bit where you nod, Sarah. Yep, good. Gregor, come on. Clue her up, come on. So I think we'll start with Gregor's choice, and without further, we will get into that. So Gregor, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I've gone relatively early TNG in this one. The episode I've gone for is an episode called Pen Pals. I think initially when people think about Pen Pals, they probably associate it more with Data than they do Picard. But I'll go on to explain the reasons why I feel it's a really good Picard episode. So the story is that the Enterprise is doing its thing, exploring strange new worlds, and they pick up some anomalous geological readings from a system, and they decide to go and investigate this phenomenon. While they're doing so, Data hears a signal from someone, and the episode doesn't show you what happens next other than Data picking up this signal from what could be presumably a pre-warp society. Anyway, so they've been in the system exploring it and doing their thing for about 6 weeks, and Data decides to go into the holodeck when Picard's off duty and say that he had heard the signal 6 weeks earlier, and then confesses to Picard that he's actually been communicating with this signal. And it turns out to be a little girl on one of these planets, which apparently is doomed because of the geological activity on the planet. So obviously there's a potential Prime Directive violation there. And this brings us into one of my truly all-time favourite Star Trek scenes, and it's a scene with the senior meeting staff who are discussing what to do next. So Picard's there, Worf's there, Riker's there, Pulaski's there, Deanna's there, and it's a fairly lengthy scene in the episode, but they all discuss the implications of violating the Prime Directive, of not violating the Prime Directive, the importance of not violating the Prime Directive, and what the implications would be personally and collectively. There's a great scene where Picard talks about a number of in summary, Worf's against. He says the Prime Directive is binary, there is no room for manoeuvre. Pulaski, being the Doctor, is very, very much for interfering and rescuing the girl, if not trying to rescue the whole planet or trying to solve the geological problems. And Worf's very against it, as I say. And then, Picard introduces a few hypothetical situations that the Prime Directive should cover. And then suddenly doubt's introduced to everyone's mind, and it's the sort of writing that I wish we were seeing more of. It's just a fantastic scene. So to close that particular scene, they play back a message from the little girl whose name is Sarjenka on the planet, basically pleading with Data to come and help him. And Picard says, well, your cry in the dark suddenly become a plea for help and cannot be ignored. So they decide to explore the options, at least. And one of the things that comes out of this is they decide to give Wesley Crusher the role of looking at the possibilities and leading a team to look at the geological anomalies in this system. So that's very much a B story, but since it's a Wesley part of the story, I'm not going to go any further than that.
Poor Wesley. Poor Wesley.
Oh, poor Wesley. Sorry, Will, if you're watching. So yeah, I think so. We're really about halfway through the episode now, and already we've seen Picard acting as a true leader, taking into account everyone's opinion, everyone's ideas, and implications of what it does. Not least of all, what would the effect be on the crew if they let this young girl die without even trying to help. So Data eventually does go down to the planet to relay a message to Sarjenka, something to do with the ionosphere not being able to get messages through. And he ends up beaming back the Enterprise with her, which is not something Jean-Luc was very happy. He's already made reference to his First Officer Riker. Every time the situation escalates, we're up to here, and then eventually we're in over our head with the Prime Directive. But fortunately, Wesley and his team by this point have worked out a way to calm the geological activity on the planet, and they act on that. They managed to save the planet, but obviously they still have the issue of Sarjenka being on the ship and with the memory of Data and the memory of being on the ship. So Jean-Luc talks with Pulaski to help get Sarjenka's memory wiped of those memories, and then take her back down to the planet settling down, and the sort of everyone lives happily ever after. But I thought the reason I picked it was that just demonstration of Picard as a truly great captain. It's not an episode where there's a lot of action. It's very dialogue heavy. It's very subject matter heavy. He's not only being a captain, but you see him being a human being. The way he's interacting with his first officer in private, with what's going on, the way he's interacting with his senior staff in meetings, and how he's dealing with that, and the decisions that he has to make, and the sheer responsibility that he has to his crew and the Prime Directive and Starfleet. And I just think, from a perspective of watching Patrick Stewart do his stuff, and from what that whole discussion around the Prime Directive absolutely nails on the head everything that Star Trek should be about.
I think that was definitely a good choice. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed watching it. I did like that the two stories that were playing alongside each other and interrelated in some way, shape, or form. Both of them had elements of Jean-Luc Picard in them. With Wesley, he was taking on his first command as the leader of this scientific research group, and when he was speaking to Riker, basically Riker said, "What this is what Picard does. Have you ever seen anybody doubt him? So there's that reference of how he is a role model for other people, and then, like I say, I'm not going into detail because you already have, but the second element of Data's pen pal, which I thought was a really, really good, because we do see a little bit of Data's, especially when he's interacting with Worf and stuff like that sort of look of shock, and I love the way that Data emotes in this, in certain elements, but definitely Jean-Luc Picard, the way he, my favourite moment of the whole thing was that whole thing. I mean, that's human. That's, it's like, we know we're in the crap, but in for a penny, in for a pound, as he references to Data in one of his conversations with it. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I think it really fits. It's a really good choice. Sarah, your thoughts on this particular one?
I really love this story. I mean, basically, this is Data having a bit of fun for a change, isn't it? Rather than being completely android, he's basically hammering around on a CB radio and seeing what's out there. He's scanning this frequency, isn't he? Looking for the anomalies, and then has a conversation with Worf, and he says, "Could you pick up other stuff?" And he starts to kind of tinker around with it, which is something more playful for Data, and also the bit where Worf trips over his tools and the kind of look that when he goes back, he's like, I did enjoy that bit. I actually found the Wesley storyline really annoying, I have to admit, because it was a bit, dearie me. But there was one fun little factoid for you, which you may have both missed. But when Wesley goes to seek some advice from Riker the second time around, so he goes into 10 forward to find him, and Riker's basically flirting away with some lovely lady who doesn't get it lucky that night. He actually performs the Riker maneuver. So as Wesley goes to sit down in the chair, he does the Riker maneuver, which for those who don't know is putting the leg over the back of the chair to sit down rather than the normal way of doing things.
I'm going to have to go back and watch that because I definitely did miss that.
I don't know whether that was some kind of he's trying to emulate Riker because he wants to be like Riker, or if this was some kind of little skit that they had off the, behind the scenes between Will Wheaton and Jonathan Frakes. But I did think it was rather cute.
Wasn't that way of showing that it was becoming more authority and more presence?
Could be.
More command presence.
Be. And I did like Riker's little line of, you've got to ask yourself, what would Picard do?
Yeah.
Which is a great. Anybody, any kind of Maya, just think to yourself, what would Picard do? That's got to be your mantra, really, hasn't it?
It's one hell of a mantra to live by.
Yeah. And I also like the fact that when Data comes to see Picard, so he comes straight into he's in the holodeck, isn't he? He's on his horse. Yeah, so he knows straight up there's something really bad if he's come to interrupt his entertainment time. But it's the fact that he calls for the meeting in his own quarters. They don't go to his, he has that conference room where they usually have big discussions. He actually goes to his private quarters. So this is a little bit like, okay, one of my staff who I value very much and is also a friend has made a really, really big doo-doo here. And I need to sort it out off the record. So we're not going to do this kind of, authoritative delay. We're going to actually right, kids, let's get together in the bedroom and figure out what we can do about this. That's interesting. And I also thought that Pulowski's change in attitude towards Data was very interesting because Worf stands against it. It's kind of like, nope, it's Prime Directive, absolutely. It's just not happening. And Pulowski, she even challenges Worf because there's that moment where Picard steps in about to have some kind of a bar brawl rather, because she says it's almost cowardly, and you can see Worf just like the word cowardly, and Picard's like, whoa, wait a minute. So it was interesting because Pulowski had always seen Data as just a machine, and now she sees him as more of a human figure and stands with him. So that was good, and I loved Picard's reaction to a child on my bridge.
Yeah, I was going to get not to mention that.
And the fact he won't even look at the poor girl. He's literally, because throughout that scene on the bridge, he's literally just don't even look at it. This thing is on my bridge.
I mean, you just got to look at. That particular moment is a brilliant example of Patrick Stewart's acting range. Yeah. You can see even before he says anything, you can see the look of disdain and anger, just watches over
the horror of it, isn't it? It's like, because he'd said in the very beginning, I think it's in the pilot episode where he says to number one, I don't work well with children. You need to help me out with when there's children involved because this is a whole new thing for the Enterprise is that we've got kids on board, whereas we didn't previously.
I mean, if anybody hasn't done it yet, have a read of this, and it will explain everything you need to know about why he doesn't like children on the bridge. It's a very good one, that one. So Sarah, yeah, you made a choice as well. So please.
I've not finished yet. You've not had my factoid yet.
Oh well. Hey, first time on the show, and she's dictating how things are.
Right. Little bit of trivia for you about this episode, Picard trivia, right? This is actually the first time you see Captain Picard actually drinking a cup of Earl Grey tea.
All right, okay, so...
It is his drink of choice, but you never actually see him getting one, because apparently in Contagion, he asks for a cup of Earl Grey, but because there's some kind of problem with the replicator, what he gets is a potted plant. And in this episode, he goes to the replicator, asks for an Earl Grey tea, hot, and he actually gets it. So this is the first time we see it. We're in season 2, his favourite tipple, and he's only just getting it now.
All right, oh, fantastic. And may I just remind you that you are not hosting Marooned on SETI Alpha 5 at this present moment in time. So, know your place.
Can I finish? Can I finish?
Yes, you may finish.
I'm finished.
It's all right, Gregor. You have to... I'm in a completely different house, so it's... We'll edit that bit out. And if you've watched the show, you'll find out we actually never edit these things out, so it's all good. It's all good. Yeah, but anyway, you carry on.
Right, I think that was me. Well, the only other thing I would say is that I did think it was really sweet that Data actually, there's a stone that she picks up in the sick bay.
Yes.
It was a singing stone. And I love that little bit where it sings a different song for every person. And she says, well, what's it sing for you? And he says, it doesn't, because I'm a machine. And she doesn't even think of him as a machine. And then the fact that he leaves the stone with her, although her memories are wiped, which we'll not get into the whole how convenient was it that her brain functioned the same as humans does and they managed to wipe the memory, but fits the story. So we won't go there, nitpicking too much. But it was really sweet that he left the stone. And then when he says to Picard afterwards, she won't remember me, but I remember, and that's enough. And Picard says, well, Data, that's you becoming one step closer to being human.
I thought that was a very poetic moment, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just...
all the way through, there is this, Data looks to Picard all the way through about trying to be more human. It comes up again in Reunification, it comes up again in the movies when he puts his motion chip in, and it's always, Picard seems to be his kind of father figure, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It comes up in the scene of Nemesis as well, which was actually wrongfully cut from the movie, but you can watch it if you get the DVD extras.
There you go, folks. You heard it here first.
Mm-hmm.
Second, last, fourth. So any more factoids on the Gregor's Choice? Any more? No? You done? You've entered? Yeah?
Thank you, yes.
Well, luckily for you, your choice is the second.
I'm here for an opinion,
I'm just keeping my head down.
Gregor, coward. You wouldn't make a very good Klingon, let's be honest with you, Gregor. Well, anyway, to be fair, your choice is the second choice, Sarah, so please do continue.
It is. So it's season 4, episode 21, and the episode is called The Drumhead. Now, factoid, not really a Star Trekky factoid, but drumhead, it actually refers to a very archaic form of a court-martial, where they used to basically use a drumhead for the judge's seat. And usually this is a kind of a parody, really, of any kind of a court-martial trial, because usually it's the case that the guy's already guilty and they're going through the motions for it. So that's pretty much reflective of what happens in the episode. But I liked this one in particular because it fits in with what's going on at the moment in terms of the whole witch hunt and, shall we say, leadership of certain countries at the moment seem to be kind of reflected in this episode, sadly. Even though we're 30 odd years on, it's still happening. Interesting, this is also directed by Jonathan Frakes, who's a damn fine director as well as an actor. It's a ship in a bottle show, so I always think that with the ship in a bottle shows, they have to try that bit harder because they haven't got fancy sets and lots of gunfire and things like this. So there's going to be a bit more. The focus is mainly on the dialogue and the drama, and I think the dialogue in this one is absolutely incredible. So we open up with an investigation following an explosion, which leads to a conspiracy being uncovered, and we get possibly the best guest star ever, Gene Simmons.
Yes.
I mean, seriously, apparently she was actually a Star Trek fan and had been wanting a guest appearance for quite a number of years. So She comes in as a retired Admiral Satie to lead an investigations or any further conspiracies. And she's basically, what can we say? Woman's crazy. Paranoia has led to her just going literally around the bend, and she's seeing conspiracy theories everywhere. She's accusing Worf, she's accusing Picard at some point. She's just literally seeing things that just don't exist. And she's going after people as well for things like birthright, because we find out that one of the characters isn't actually, in fact, part Vulcan, he's part Romulan. So that obviously makes him guilty by virtue of his heritage, which isn't the case, as we know. And in the end, the best scene of it is the bit where Picard just takes her down, but literally, he never raises his voice, he doesn't change his tone, and he actually recites her own father's words back at her, and she just has a complete and utter meltdown, to the point where her senior officer, who's come in to kind of oversee things and say, well, there's something really badly going on, he doesn't even say a word. He just gets up, walks out, and the whole thing's off. Unless because that poor guy lost out on some money there because he had a non-speaking part in the end.
And ironically, it was the part that said the most about the scene as well. To be fair.
Yeah, and I just think that's amazing how he does that so calmly and delivers it so well, and the way he's twisted it back on her, and he never loses his temper, where she is going completely crazy the whole way through, and she's bringing Worf, even she turns Worf into believing that Picard's actually a part of the conspiracy as well, because at the very end Worf reflects with Picard afterwards and says, well, I'm really sorry I even got sucked into it, like I feel like a sheep now, but shows how easy it is for all of us to get sucked into this kind of nonsense that they feed us. And I love the fact that, yeah, it's an awful lot about basically based on the McCarthy trials, isn't it, of America from way back. But it's that, I'm trying to think of the words now.
Xenophobic?
No, it's sacrificing freedom for security. It's that problem that's at the crux of it, and that's what's certainly happening in the world today. And that's why I think there's a kind of a thread with what's going on right now, and a really good Picard moment in that he just pulls the rug from under in such a brilliant way.
Yeah, it was, like I say, once again, it was a brilliant choice, and amazingly so, like you say, so relevant for the world today, in how it's so easy just to get swept up in, with, like you say, it's just so easy. But Gregor, if you want to start off on this one, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, well, it is one of my favourite episodes of any series anyway, the Drumhead. That's this aspect, going into the psychological of it, the confirmation bias that she uses when dealing with Tarsus. He lied, and he's a Romulan, therefore he's guilty. Mm-hmm. And then she uses Worf's prejudice towards Romulans to get him on her side as well. He, very enthusiastically plays the role in the investigation that she wants him to play. Whereas Picard's going through it very logically, only making decisions based on the evidence that's in front of him. When eventually get into the warp core and they find out that it was micro cracks in the metal, that it was an accident. Therefore, the fact that the Klingon botanist that was on board, I think he was a botanist, wasn't he? Senior biologist, xenobiologist, yes. So while he was actually spying, he wasn't guilty of the crime that they initially thought he was. So it was, Picard using, not using confirmation bias to link facts together, whereas she does, and that's big difference between the process he's going through in the episode and the process that Admiral Satie is going through in the episode as well, and sort of taking the emotion out of it even though Picard passionately believes in what he's doing, he takes the emotion out of the evidence. And obviously, we are given, as Sarah's already pointed out, one of the truly great Picard speeches of any episode in the entire 7 seasons that we see. And, of course, that absolutely iconic meme.
Yeah, I mean, oh god, I mean, if only we had the that would be an interesting figure to find out how many times that thing has been used over the years. I mean, that has got to be one of the, I mean, even non-Star Trek fans use that. It's
Yep. Yep.
it's
But
brilliant.
interesting factoid, because there is one coming. I've got a factoid for you. So one of the things that she goes after Picard for, which I found very, very stark at the time actually, is that she references he's violated the Prime Directive 9 times, including, obviously, she references back pen pals. She references, obviously, Borg assimilation as well, but 9 violations of the Prime Directive. That seems like rather a lot. And he does go on to do it even more times than that, but you'd think that something like the Prime Directive, which is like literally your General Order 1, it's the starship captain's equivalent of the Hippocratic Oath. And even at one point, Kirk says that a starship captain most solemn oath is that he will give his life or the life of his crew rather than violate the Prime Directive.
Yeah, that falls.
Interestingly, though, he's not the only one. I mean, do you know who do you think actually violated the Prime Directive more times?
I was going to say I was going to go out on Janeway.
It's actually not.
Oh, you're going to say Cisco, aren't you?
No, Cisco was the least.
Oh, okay.
You might think, certainly in Pale Moonlight, that was a really massive violation. No spoilers, but there is a violation of the Prime Directive, big style. No, I think on the tally, it was actually Kirk and Picard. It depends on whether we're talking about having bent it or having done it with the best intentions, but they were about level pegging, actually.
Yeah, but Picard had 170 odd episodes, and Kirk had less than half that.
Fair enough. Archie gets off with it because there was no Prime Directive. So
in that case, then Kirk's the winner on that one, because the clickers, if you look at it relatively speaking, you just said over a longer period of time, over a shorter period of time.
But maybe Kirk cleaned up his act later on and went for it,
Well, there is a lot of episodes in the original series where other starship captains have gone rogue on a planet.
Yeah.
And they've turned it into the Roman Empire or the Nazis or gangsters or...
Interestingly, though, even if you just go up as far up as Starfleet, though, I mean, Insurrection is based pretty much on the premise of Starfleet violating their own Prime Directive.
Well, and this. This is a debate we can get into later on, and we will. So I'll move nicely on. For me, that episode was rather compelling because you see a lot of Picard come out in this one, like you say, with the speeches. I mean, I agree with that being one of the best speeches that he gave when he recited Sati's own father's words back to him. I mean, a close second has to be the line in First Contact, where we see some real emotion from Picard in that one. But yeah, I agree with you on that one. For me, it was the whole. You seen how he could tell from the start that he was like, something's not quite right here. Something's not quite right, and he was a man of his. He followed it through. He never got swept up in it like everybody else did. We also see him eat a little bit of humble pie, not a huge slice, but a little bit, because he was calling out Sati on the use of Betazoid in the interrogations, and she quite very quickly spun that round and said, "Well, you've got a Betazoid as a counselor." I said, "Well, yes. Is she involved in meetings? Is she involved in decision making?" Yeah. Do you consult with her? Yeah, but not in a. And I went, okay, maybe I have to change my ways on that one. And like I say, it's a very small bit, but it's a little, just a little dig. But you see how he handles that, and he handles it really well. Shut up. That was my phone going off. The thing for me with it is, like I say, is how it really sort of stands its ground as a standalone episode and an episode in today. You could watch that, like you say, today, and you could see how you can interpret it in a way that's relevant to today. Also, I like to see. I'm liking the bit with Worf, because every now and again, a couple of times during the episode, you see him he's like the dog on the end of a leash. He's like, he wants to go after. You just see him getting angry at the Romulan references for his father. The fact that the xenobiologist was a spy. Dishonorable stuff like that. You do see a little bit of that, and it's not too much Worf, but it's just enough to remind you of who he is, because I think he does get sort of put to one side a lot in TNG. It's like he's a Klingon, for God's sake, and he's sat, but definitely enjoyed that episode, and a very, very good choice. I mean, to be fair, everything you guys have said already, I could repeat, and I agree with you completely on that one. So, like I say, that's why I'm not too commentive on this one. But bringing me nicely onto the third episode, my episode. So yeah, our third choice, my third choice is Chain of Command, which is a 2-part episode. Basically, I'll keep it as brief as possible, because with it being a 2-part episode, it's basically the Enterprise meets up with a fellowship, which I think is the Cairo, I believe, off the top of my head. Sarah might be able to sort of confirm that for me in the short while. But yeah, they meet up, and we meet Captain Jellicoe, who again is somebody that is subject of quite a few memes at the moment. If anybody's on Twitter, you'll have seen them flying about. But yeah, we meet Captain Jellicoe, and we find that Picard gets the command of the Enterprise taken off him and handed over to Jellicoe. We do initially know that there is something up, that Picard is up to something, and he is up to something with Beverly Crusher and Worf. What they are doing is they are infiltrating, and I will use the word infiltrating because Picard uses the word penetrate.
Well, you've used the Picard's up to something with Crusher and Worf, and penetrate and integrate. I mean, this is...
Yeah, am I going to have to do a third take on this?
No, just leave that in there.
Oh, matron.
Oh, matron.
Behave yourself, boy. So they're on this covert mission to basically find and destroy a weapon, some form of biological weapon, the type of which escapes me just at this moment.
Beta radiation.
And whilst this is going off, the crew of the Enterprise have no knowledge of this. So Riker has no knowledge, Data has no knowledge, nobody has no knowledge of what Picard is involved with. So Jellicoe's taken over the Enterprise because he's going to negotiate with the Cardassians over rumours that they are massing forces on the border with the Federation. And that doesn't particularly go well, because the secret mission that Picard, Beverly, and Worf are all on is indeed a trap engineered by the Cardassians to capture Jean-Luc Picard, in the misguided belief that he has the defense plans for a particular planet that the Cardassians want to invade. And it's at that point we get the famous scene, how many lights are there? And it's that particular point where it starts to get really interesting for Picard, because we really do see the humanity there, because he is tortured, coerced, basically sort of repeatedly asked how many lights there are. There's 4. No, there isn't. And repeatedly asked for information, repeatedly belittled by the Kardashians and stuff like that. And you see that he manages to keep his convictions, but you see the humanity and the pain and the emotion come out in Picard. And it's, without, like I say, I really enjoyed it, because you get to see Picard literally in the flesh, literally laid bare, emotions, everything, and you also get to see a comparison, and it's one of the few times I think you actually get to see a direct comparison in the leadership style of Picard. Because when Jellicoe takes over, you immediately see a difference in command style, in attitudes, in the way, and you see that in the reaction of the crew, of Riker, of Deanna Troi, and you get to see that. And as you watch it, you think, oh, this doesn't feel right, and you feel uneasy with the crew, and that's why I like this particular episode. Sarah probably has a little bit more factual information on this than I do, and I've deliberately done that because, like I say, you are the master of memory alpha for our crew, so I'm sure you'll pick up on a few interesting points there. But yeah, so what I forgot to mention was that while they were on the planet, they were sort of infiltrating this facility, and they discover that it was indeed a trap. Beverly and Worf do indeed get out, but Picard is captured, as I mentioned. And it's really good. I mean, the acting talent in there is brilliant. I'm probably not doing this thing justice, but I really enjoyed it. So I'm going to pass over to Sarah and let you sort of take up the technical elements of this and your opinions on my choice.
Okay, well, I'll go with the question for both of you, and I hope when Jellicoe takes over, so he actually gets drafted in to take over. So Picard's sent on this top secret mission, and Jellicoe comes in as command, which I've got a little bit of a problem with, because I'm surprised that they couldn't just promote Riker, because he's a good negotiator. So, but that's an aside. So anyway, Jellicoe comes in. One of the first things he says is, "Get rid of the fish." Now he's referring to the pet fish in Picard's ready room. Yes. What is the name of the fish?
Livingston.
Well done. Brownie points for Gregor.
Sure.
It's called Livingston. Yeah. The fish does actually come back afterwards. They didn't get rid of it altogether. It gets resurrected. And just as a real life bit of trivia for you, Livingston the fish actually has a Twitter handle. Yeah.
Okay.
I follow him on Twitter. Yeah. He posts some quite amusing stuff every now and again, but there you go. But Gregor may remember this one, but actually we were at the 50th anniversary convention in Las Vegas for Star Trek, and we were actually in a room where they were voting the top 10 Star Trek episodes of all time, and this one was voted 7th. So,
I would have voted it number 1, to be fair, but
number 1 was City on the Edge of Forever. And it did have some of the other ones that were involved. There was the Magnificent Ferengi.
In a Mirror Darkly.
In a Mirror Darkly was there. City on the Edge of Forever, Amok Time. It was up against some pretty top class episodes, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
It's done well to get 7. But I also wonder, another question for you, there is a very strong reference in how many lights are there to a very dystopian novel produced by an English writer some years ago. Does anybody know what that link is?
I'm going to guess by the silence, no.
It's also a little bit relevant as well. It's actually George Orwell's 1984. The main character, Winston, gets tortured close towards the end of the novel, and the guy torturing him basically says, "How many fingers am I holding up? How many fingers am I holding up? How many fingers am I holding up?" And he eventually breaks and says 5. So that's where that comes from. But another interesting fact, which I do like this particular change actually, is that when Jellicoe is being briefed by Councillor Troy about the kind of the changes, and he says he wants to go over the crew manifest and the kind of the shifts and all this kind of stuff, and then it's just as she's leaving, he says, "Oh, one thing, I like a level of decorum. I want you wearing a uniform whenever you're on duty," and she actually sticks with that after that episode. Which apparently we were just listening to an interview with Marina Sirtis a few weeks ago, and she said she loved the fact that they did that, because up until then she'd just been this bit of totty that's floating around, but she was actually a commissioned officer. And she does, and further on episode, she does actually get her bridge qualification as a bridge officer, just as Beverly had before her. So the fact that she changes into uniform actually just brings home to people that, no, actually I am a member of Starfleet. I'm not just this, floral lady who bounces around in ship on and says nice things about people's feelings. So that's your factoid things. Other than that, just an interesting fact is that the chap who played, now Greg will keep me right, the chap who plays the girl who's torturing Picard,
Yes.
the actor is called
David Warner.
David Warner, is a Shakespearean actor who'd actually played with John Luke, what I'm saying, Patrick Stewart previously, and they both actually played characters in Christmas Carol, but not in the same film.
You definitely get that that vibe in the scenes, you know what I mean, and you get that sort of because there's that mutual respect as actors off screen, you get that conveyed in the sort of the dynamic between the two of them on screen as well. I mean, I just love his voice. I think he's got such a lovely voice.
It's quite chilling, actually. I mean, the bit where he's talking to his daughter, because he brings his daughter into the
I mean,
that is, oh my god. And then when she kind of says, do humans have mummies and daddies like we? And he's like, but they're not like us. They don't love their children like we do. And it's kind of like, sorry, what? And you can literally see the Nazis being portrayed, the Cardassians being portrayed as the Nazis of Star Trek. This is the kind of one of the first glimpses we really get into them. And they are literally, certainly when he talks about being a kid and he's starving on the streets and he gets this egg and somebody steals it from him, and then he's kind of like, ever since then, we've never gone hungry. We've terrorized other people. We've claimed land. We've mined this. We've done that. But it's very much like that rise after the First World War of Germany under the leadership of he who shall not be named. So yeah, I find them really, really chilling. And I'm just checking notes. Yeah. That's me.
Well, also, interestingly, David Warner played two different characters in two different Star Trek films.
Yes.
Okay.
He played the Federation envoy in Star Trek V, the one on Nimbus 3, and he played Chancellor Gorkin in Undiscovered Country.
Yes.
So,
there you go, guys. So, Gregor, your thoughts?
Yeah, again, another episode that features very highly in my all-time list. I think from a viewer's perspective, just to watch these two Shakespearean actors who have known each other in real life and worked with each other in real life for a number of years, to watch them sparring in essentially a Shakespearean tale of dominance, one trying to get the other to submit, another's refusal to submit. It's just, a fantastic piece of writing, a fantastic piece of acting, and it's just an absolute joy to watch. And again, demonstrates you don't need fancy special effects and lens flare to make something really great.
It's all about dialogue. I have just remembered a fascinating fact that I read just before this. In actual fact, you may not be aware, but David Warner actually got the part 3 days before they were shooting the episode. So he had to really speedily learn the script. Now, part of the way he did it was by having cue cards placed on set to help him out, which actually really lended itself really well to the scene, because what he's actually doing is this whole dehumanizing Picard is where he's like, you don't have clothes, you don't have a name anymore, I'm dehumanizing you in any way possible, and I'm treating you as a thing. And one of the things, the cue cards were placed usually over Patrick Stewart's shoulder so that he could read them, but be kind of like looking in his direction but not at him. But it just really lends the bit to, he's like, not looking at this thing on the floor because I'm dehumanizing, but actually it was more to do with the cue cards.
And I like I said, I thoroughly really, I mean, that's actually, I didn't actually know that. I mean, that was, I mean, you would never know that. You would never know that looking at the you know, the episode.
He's a good stage actor, so he'll be used to, you know, adapting, and the cards there, and it's true, but it just kind of almost helps it a little bit that he's not then looking at him.
I mean, one of the things that's just, like I say, popped into my head is when I was watching it, I was thinking, this is what the Picard series could have been. Because we've got an episode where Picard is leading from the front. He is the centre of attention, but you see that vulnerability, which is something they wanted to, bring into Picard a little bit. But you see that in a way where he doesn't lose his authoritative centre stage figure from the show, and it just felt from the get-go that this is what a story about Picard should be. This is what and then again, like I say, that's my personal opinion. I mean, I do enjoy Picard, so I'm not hating on it, but yeah, I mean, it was a brilliant episode. Like I say, I think it showed. I think it really did show Picard's humanity, both by comparing his command style and proving that he is just another human being. Because at the very end of the episode, as he's been led out of the interrogation room, he said, he screams with the ultimate passion, "There are 4 lights." But when you see him later on at the very end speaking to Deanna, he basically said at the end of it, he offered me a life of comfort and, or a life of torture. And for a split second, I was so almost ready to say, there are 5 lights. Because that's all they wanted him to do. He was like, I was almost tempted to say there were 5 lights, and implying that he would.
He actually says, I'll just correct you there, because what he actually says, I love the moment in particular, just to go back to the one that's in my mind, is the bit where he actually looks so smug when he says, "You just called me Picard."
Yeah.
Stoner in the face of his torture. But what he actually says to Deanna is that they offered me a life of comfort if I'd just give in and say there's 5 lights. And she's like, but you didn't. And he said, no. But you know what? At one point, I thought I saw 5 lights. So he's not willing to say it. He's never given in at any point, but he says at one point he thinks he sees 5 lights. Because they've done that much that he actually started to hallucinate and think maybe they really are, because that's how they do it. That is the nature of the torture. It just breaks people. But unfortunately, as it's been proven time and again, it's pointless, because they get nothing out of him either. Because they're trying to get out of him. They think he's got plans for it's the defense plans, isn't it?
Yeah,
they're planning to mount a attack, and they think he's going to have plans.
The Enterprise is the flagship of the Starship Fleet. So they think if they can get information out of Picard when they do invade Federation space, they'll have a tactical advantage due to the information that they would have gained from him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think actually the scene that you're referring to when he says he calls him Picard, I think that's a fantastic scene at the end, where essentially the Cardassian master plan has failed, and they're going to have to return Picard to Starfleet. But the David Warnock character, his pride gets the better of him, and while the guards are coming to get Picard to take him to a shuttle to return him to Starfleet, he's still determined to get him to say there are 5 lights, and that that battle of wit is still going on. There's no advantage anymore to get him to say there are 5 lights. They're not, we're not going to get anything out of it other than he's broken him, and he fails to break him.
I say it the emotion, just pure, and it's pure, quintessential Patrick Stewart right there. And I think that was, for me at least. Do we have any last
moment though? There's a moment where we were in Vegas, which is brilliant, by the way. I can't remember if it was the first or the second time we were there, but they basically in the foyer area they're replaying clips of Star Trek episodes, and it's just on a loop. And they had that one up, and there was a little crowd gathered around, and it's come to the bit at the very end where he's going to be dragged away, and he goes to yell out, there are 4 lights, and everybody in the crowd just starts, yes, you tell him.
You definitely get that vibe from just watching it at home as well. It's like, yes.
Yeah, there's this whole crowd of people, and there's deadly silence, because normally it's just wallpaper that they've got hanging around, but there's this big group gathered around, and it's coming to that pivotal moment. There's just deadly silence while he says it. Up until then, everybody's murmuring about where you're going next, and then he says that deadly silence, and then just this big eruption of cheer, and it was fantastic. And it's great that it has such meaning to people as well. I have to give credit where credit's due as a final thought on this one. When I was trying to pick an episode, when you pick an episode of TNG about Picard, it's a difficult one to pick because there are so many choices you could pick from. It's a case of everybody has a different thing they take away from the characters. So everybody would pick a different one. So I was a bit of a loose end as to what episode I was going to pick. And I had a few shortlisted. But I used Twitter and put out, let's have what's your best episode? What would you recommend? And this particular episode was picked or suggested by Dan Decker. So I have to say thank you for making that suggestion, because that is the one that I went with, and I'm glad that I did, because it's been a long time since I've seen that episode. And like I say, definitely credit where credit's due. It wasn't my original choice. It was one of the choices, but it was the one I went with. And like I say, it came from Dan Decker. So thank you very much, Dan. Much appreciated. Yeah, so many. The ones that didn't make it for me. Tapestry was another one on my shortlist, which I think is a really interesting one. A good play between Q and Picard, and the kind of like the whole element of risk. But I thought that Drumhead ties in quite well with what's going on right now. It's a bit kind of
All Good Things.
All Good Things is a great episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, again, Q's in with that one. But yeah, I think the 3 that we've got here are all quite relevant to what's happening in the here and now.
Funny you should mention All Good Things, because I do have the ship behind me.
The Louis Pasteur.
Yes, somewhere, but it's in there.
Yeah, that was the one Crusher was captain of.
But yeah, it's any honourable mentions other than the ones. So we've got All Good Things and a few others. Any other honourable mentions, Greta? You usually have a few for us.
I think it's some of the ones. Best of Both Worlds is obviously a big Picard episode.
I think that's more of a Riker episode actually, because the Picard becomes Borg, but it's really how Riker and Shelby, it's how they cope without their figurehead, really. I thought that on my shortlist was also iBorg, because that one was a fascinating study in Picard's being a Borg, and I love the scene between him and Hugh. So Picard, he's had nothing to do with this Borg they've rescued up until this point, and then he interviews him as Mercutius, and he says, this ship will be assimilated, Geordi will be assimilated. And it's when Hugh says, I don't want that. And that moment where Picard's like, right, no, actually he's not a Borg. And there's this huge turnaround. And even Guinan, who's obviously her entire homeworld's been assimilated by the Borg, she turns around on that one as well. I really enjoyed that one, but there was just that scene at the end of Drumhead.
There was a few. Gambit.
Yes.
Big Picard one. Family's a big Picard one.
Sarek. Unification. Unification's a huge one. That's a lovely scene between Spock and Data talking about Picard there. And
Captain's Holiday.
That's a good fun one. That is a good fun one.
Cupid.
This
You
is
could more of
a good example of how, like I say, that you could reel off so many episodes.
There's just so many. He's been such an amazing figure. Yeah, it's a great role model. What would Picard do?
So, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of part one, our empathic episodes, and we filmed. You'll not be watching this on the date in question, but we have filmed this on Picard Day, which is the reason why we chose Picard as our subject. In case anybody is actually sort of unsure as to if I'm telling the truth or not, I don't know if this will focus in.
No, didn't. No, but today is the 16th of June.
It flashes out at the end there, but it is the 16th of June, so we are being honest. It is Picard Day, so happy belated Picard Day to everybody. So we're going to move on now to our next segment, which is Fire at Will. So we'll be back in part two. Please join us there.
We're going to take a tea break with my lovely USS Alba mug, which is available from your Quartermaster store.
Oh, shameless plug.
Why not?
Yes, guys, see us in part two. We'll be right back.